Hello, hello, happy Friday. I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and this is 5 Question Friday. Every Friday at 5 o'clock Croatia time, answer 5 questions about Croatia from people who have sent them in on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, expatinCroatia.com, email, our consulting sessions, and people who use a jack-in-the-box, which seems, it's just mean. Just me. So we have 5 great questions tonight, but before that, we have breaking news in Croatia if you are a foreigner. So today, the parliament, Sabor, they passed the new law on foreigners today, the Zakon o strancima. So this is a really big deal. We have been waiting for this for almost a year. They put out the first draft of the changes last April, I'd have to say, maybe even last March. So yeah, we're coming up on a year. So they just voted today at noon, and so I'm going to tell you about it. Now, I want to get right to the heart of the issue here up at the top, because there are a number of changes, and I'm gonna go through what is public. But I want to communicate how this works, and then I'm going to talk about digital nomads. Okay, so stick around. So, all right, the way that it works is they make a proposal. Okay. And the proposal is public. That is what has been on the ministry's website for months and months and months and months, okay? And then they go in the parliament, they go through a first reading and a second reading and sometimes a third reading. They did not do a third reading in this case, and they vote, okay? Now, after they vote, it doesn't mean that the law is enacted. So it's not enacted until it is published in the Narodne Novine, which is like the National Gazette. So once it's published in that, then that means that the law is active. However, you still have to have a rule book to come out. That can take some months, 6 months, let's say. It really kind of depends, for them to put out the rule book. And the rule book is essentially like a guide on how the ministry is supposed to interpret the law, enact the law, essentially. It's kind of like, like a buddy guide for it. So we have a few steps until everything is going to be, implemented and acted, that kind of thing. Now, what I want to communicate is I'm going to tell you some changes today that are definitely confirmed, but a couple of changes that are not yet completely confirmed. And I want to explain that why, because when they do this voting, it doesn't mean that there's immediately a final version that is put out on the web, that's public for consumption, okay? That is going to come when they publish it in the National Gazette. So there is not a public document that shows us the final version of this law yet, okay? What we have is the latest proposals. Now, there is already in the news about a lot of the changes that have been enacted. So, okay, how do those media outlets know what's in the law if there's not a public one? Because big media outlets have connections with Parliament, and so they are able to get access to what those changes are that us regular folks can't get access to. Now, when we saw these changes come out this afternoon, we're like, oh my gosh, we got to tell everybody. But there was something notable that was missing from all of the news articles, and that was changes to the regulation of digital nomads. Now, what we were expecting, because it was part of the initial proposal, is that digital nomads could have a regulated stay up to 18 months as part of this new law. So now it's 12 months, and the proposal was up to 18 months. So that wasn't in any of the news outlets today, and it was like, okay, well, what's going to happen? So we worked our magic, we worked our connections, and we got some back channel information, okay? Now, I want to make sure that this is abundantly clear that until that act is published in Narodne Novine, none of the things I'm going to tell you today are 100% confirmed, okay? There is a 99% chance that it's all correct, but ultimately, we will not know exactly what's in the act until it is published in the National Gazette, because that is the law that will be final, all right? But I'm going to tell you the stuff that we found out, okay? So as far as the digital nomads, there is a 99% chance that yes, it will be extended to 18 months. But we have a little exclusive that wasn't part of the initial proposal that we are going to share with you now. And that is that most likely, digital nomads will be able to do their 18 months, and then they will be able to get a second 18 months one time without having to wait 6 months in between, which means they could get potentially 36 months. So that is a really radical change if that is what we end up seeing in the act on about 10 days from now, sometime between 5 and 10 days whenever they publish the act. So that's crazy, because up until this point, if you were a digital nomad, you had to wait 6 months in between your applications. So that meant that most likely you would have to leave Croatia for like 90 days, and then you could come back on a tourist stay, and then once 6 months and 1 day has elapsed, you could apply again. But now, if this change does go through, one single time you could apply immediately for another digital nomad permit and get them back to back. So that is a really, really big deal, and I'm so grateful to our little birdies, our connections, that were able to get this information to us so that we could share it with you in advance. So I don't want to break out the champagne just yet, but you know, this is something that looks like it is coming down the pike. So we don't like to tell you anything that's not confirmed, and that's why I'm putting like a really big asterisk on this, a giant disclaimer that ultimately it's going to come down to what is in the act, but this is what it looks like is going to happen. So yeah, woo, that's a big thing. So what else is going to be in this law? So there's quite a few changes that I want to just quickly kind of go over with you. We are going to publish a post later today that's going to go over these changes that I'm sharing with you in brief, but because we kind of have this format, I want to give you a little bit of my reactions to them and kind of tell you, you know, why some of these changes were made. All right, so that way you can kind of better understand. So what I'm going to share with you now, these are the things that were in the media, which means they are very much likely true because they came from a legit media outlet that has connections with the parliament. So they were able to talk to parliament directly about what was passed. Okay, so let's start with work and residence permits. So the EU Blue Card, the validity has been changed or extended. It was up to 2 years. Now it's up to 4 years. That is significant. That is a doubling. For regular work and residence permits, they have been extended from 1 year to 3 years. That is also a big, major change. Seasonal work permits, they've been extended from 6 months to 9 months. Also, no work experience or qualifications are going to be required for simple auxiliary jobs like assistant chefs, waiters, housekeepers, those kinds of things. So these are some major changes to how they regulate work and stay permits for foreigners. And it's because of the labor shortage. Croatia doesn't have enough labor with its existing population, so they are needing to bring people in from the outside to do these jobs, to do these labor jobs, but also even like we have a list on our website on how to get we have a guide how to get a work permit. On that post, we have a list of all the jobs that are in shortage. So it's not just labor jobs, like programming is on there, civil engineering is on there. So if you are out there and you're trying to figure out a way to get to Croatia and you don't have another natural path, or you just want to be in Croatia long term, because look, sure, digital nomad is going to be extended for 3 years, but then after that, you know, got to get out. So, you know, the only way that you can stay in Croatia long term, like absolutely long term, other than marrying a Croatian or marrying an EU citizen, is to work. So, you know, I would say go and look at that list of jobs if you're trying to find a way to get in Croatia and stay here long term. But that is the reason that they have made such drastic changes to this, because you know, people are coming from across the world to come and work here for a year, and then then they have to go through that whole renewal process every single year. It's tedious for not just the worker. I mean, they have a serious sense of insecurity, but it's also tedious for the employer as well. So this is going to allow for people to be here longer, have more stability, really kind of embed themselves with those employers. So yeah, so this is a big deal. And also it's going to alleviate a huge burden on MUP, because, you know, I also want to go into this a little bit, guys. This is going to give you some more insight. the processing time for residence permits is long. Like if you're applying for a work permit, it's like under 60 days, usually under a month, because these are for jobs that are needed. They need to get placed like immediately. But that means that the processing time for everybody else has been extended. So like Digital Nomad is being processing at like 6-7 months on average, you know, and people who are applying based on other purposes is taking even longer. So if these work and residence permits are extended, that means there's less of a burden on MUP because they are processing fewer applications. I mean, it was like 200,000 work permits that were issued this past year. I mean, think about that. So this is going to cut down those numbers and alleviate the burden on the bureaucracy as well as on the employee and the employer. So this is great. This is great. Okay, so next, stricter rules for employers. So this is the people who are employing these foreign workers, all right? So this is also really important. So their employers have to give a financial guarantee. So employers must pay the state one average monthly gross salary per worker if they withdraw after obtaining a work permit. So there have been a lot of foreign workers that got lured here with a work contract, and then the contract got pulled out from under them. So now the state is going to fine them 1 month's salary if they do that for each worker that they do that to, which is great. Proof, frankly, it should be higher and honestly, some money should be going to that worker because they had to pay to come here, but maybe that's something that will happen in the future. Proof of adequate accommodation is required if the employer provides housing or arranged worker housing. This is also great because there are a lot of employers that are providing housing to their employees, and it is substandard living. It is not for someone to live in. And there's multiple workers to a unit more than should be in a place. So there has to be some kind of proof of adequate accommodation. Now, I don't know how they're going to prove that. That's something that we're only going to find out in time, but I'm glad that this is something that's going into the law. Employers with legal issues or debts cannot hire foreign workers. Duh. I mean, that should have happened from the very beginning. If you are already lax on, your legal issues or your debts, you shouldn't be allowed to hire foreign workers because it just implies that you're going to then screw them over. Okay. So then minimum revenue requirement for businesses hiring foreign workers. So they have to make at least 10,000 euros per month for legal entities and 15,000 euros per month over 6 months for sole proprietors. I think that's also great to show that you actually have the money to hire and pay these people. There's also higher fines for violations. So between 5,000 and 20,000 euro fines for companies employing undocumented workers. Yeah. And 2,000 to 6,000 euros for individuals. So, total overhaul. Like these are a lot of changes regulating workers because it has just been a free-for-all with the foreign workers. And unfortunately, they've been taken advantage of, abused in a lot of cases, put in a substandard accommodation, having contracts taken out from under them. There's also something else I saw. Let me roll down here. So now there's going to be a delayed enforcement of these penalties. So they're not going to start implementing these penalties until after January 1, 2026, which I kind of understand because they're going to need time to kind of work stuff in terms of how they're going to enforce this law. Then there's also going to be a ban on digital platform work like Bolt or Wolt or Glovo for businesses that have illegally hired foreign workers. So essentially, they're going to be penalized for mistreating foreign workers. And then there's also going to be equal pay protection. I think this is also great. So foreign workers are going to receive the same salary as Croatian employees in equivalent roles. This is a big deal for a variety of reasons. So when foreign workers are getting paid really like much smaller amounts than what a Croatian employee would get paid. Now that has a variety of implications for sure. I mean, some would argue that they're going to hire foreign workers instead of Croatians because of the low amount that they're being charged, okay, or being paid, okay? This is just going to make everything equal because a lot of them, oh, you're darling. Aw, ain't he cute? Okay. All right, so that's also important. So now we're going to talk about... All right, get out of your system, guys. All right, So next we're going to talk about the last bit of changes, and this is related to Croatian diaspora. I know you guys have asked some questions, so I am going to scroll up and get to your questions, but I want to finish talking about these last changes. So this last one doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, so I'll explain why. All right, so right now, if Croatian diaspora who do not have citizenship want to move to Croatia, they can apply for residence based on humanitarian reasons. This is a very special, regulated expat in Croatia. EXPAT.
Da, možete vi, can you?
Sure, of course.
Is that on TikTok?
Yes. Oh, you have a Croatian keyboard. All right. Ooh. Yeah, there.
Thanks.
You're welcome. What are your names?
Marin, Ivan, Dean.
Oh, Sara. Drago mi.
Is that live?
Yes.
How it's done?
It's on Instagram Live.
I'm on Instagram.
Yeah.
He
It's
said,
the same.
He said he got Instagram.
Perfect.
Can you help me
Sure.
so I can watch?
Absolutely. Thanks. Okay. Oops. Hey guys, you're watching this live. All right. There you go.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Ciao. All right, guys. All right. So, let me get back to Croatian diaspora. So if you're a Croatian diaspora, there is a program for you under humanitarian reasons, okay? That would allow you to come to Croatia and live without citizenship with more favorable terms. So in the new law, what's been in the news today is that they've created a special category for Croatian diaspora. They said it's a new residence category to regulate them, that they're no longer going to be considered foreigners. They can apply for citizenship immediately after obtaining residence, that there's no work permit required, that they can work freely, and they'll have access to education and vocational training. This is my confusion. And maybe this confusion is going to be cleared up once the new law comes out, but my immediate reaction is all of those things are already true. So when you apply for residence based on humanitarian reasons right now as a member of the Croatian diaspora, you're not already considered a foreigner. I mean, you are a foreigner because this is part of the law on foreigners. That's why I think it's kind of funny they're saying they're no longer considered foreigners. It's like, yes, they are, because they're being regulated by the law on foreigners. It says there's no work permit required. It's like, there's not a work permit required for them now. They can freely work. It says you can apply for citizenship immediately after obtaining residence. That's true now. And it says you have access to education and vocational training. That's also true now. So this is all already true. So I don't know how this is different. What it might be is they're just kind of setting up a new category in the law. So maybe it's just an administrative change. It's not actually like a concrete change. But again, we're waiting for the final act. We need to see what the final act says. And these acts are like 200 pages long, guys. So there's a lot in there. And also we need to see the rule book. And that's 6 months away. So it's hard to know what this means, because right now what I'm looking at, what's been published today, it's like these are things that are ciao, these are things that already happened. Okay, so those are the changes. Did I cover all of them? Yeah, I covered all of them. So I want to just like see what else you guys had for me, okay, because I know some questions came in. So let's see, we're gonna go from the top and see what we got here. All right, Aspire movement, hey! Nova Scotia, hey Nova Scotia. Okay, ooh. All right, let's see what else we got. Look at everybody enjoying. Hey Tamara! Tanya's here, Queen, Annalisa. Oh, Emily, how do we think these changes will affect how quickly they process citizenship requests? It should not impact it at all. Because citizenship is a different department. Yes, it's done by MUP, but it's a different department entirely. So I don't anticipate that this is going to have any impact whatsoever. The only reason I could maybe see an impact is if, because of there's going to be less of a burden on MUP, maybe they shift people to that department. That is complete speculation, and I think it's highly unlikely that that's something that they would do, because it's not like MUP has all this spare time. Croatia is way more popular than they thought it was ever going to be. They didn't anticipate that they were going to need so many foreign workers, so they're already overburdened. So even with taking off some of this burden because of these changes, hopefully it's just going to bring it down to the like bare minimum status quo, you know, like, okay, regular processing. I think the biggest impact we're going to see is going to be in the processing times of residence permits, not citizenship. That's a great question, Emily, though. Thank you. Okay, let's scroll down here. Ooh, we've got somebody new. Hi, welcome. All right, let's see what else. Any changes? Exit the rat race. Yeah, I feel ya. Bye, ciao, vidimose. Any change to ancestry citizenship? No. So the Zakon o strancima de law on foreigners, that does not regulate citizenship. Citizenship is regulated by a different act entirely. So there have not been any changes to that since 2020. But if there are, we will of course share them with you. Thank you for the question. Hi, Martina. Hi, Lori. Kimberly's here. Oh, hi, Mary Ellen. Kathy. Mama. Let's see, Irena, Ivan. Am I at the bottom now? Nope, I am still not at the bottom. Lots of people here today. Oh, there's a question, I think. It's hard to see on the back on front of my sweatshirt. Just wondering if Croatia recognizes same-sex marriages from other countries. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Croatia does recognize same-sex marriages from other countries. You cannot get legally married in Croatia as same-sex partners. You can have a life partnership. You just can't have a proper marriage. But if you got married in another country that does recognize same-sex marriages, then Croatia will recognize it. Yes. Okay. Let's keep going. Marcel, hello, Miss Sarah. Are there any changes for family reunification for foreign workers who have had temporary residence for 1 year? No, not based on what they've published today. But again, we're going to have to go through the act with a fine-tooth comb. We usually work in conjunction with the lawyer network that we collaborate with. So they kind of split up different pieces of the act and they comb through it to find all the different changes and kind of reconcile. It's actually quite a big process. That's why we have a disclaimer here about that, because we really have to go through everything and understand what they've changed. But so far we haven't seen any indication that they're going to change that. But I think that they should. I do think that they should allow families to be joined without kind of any restriction. Okay. All right. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but I'll say Mitt. I have temporary residence in Croatia. Can I work as a seafarer abroad without it affecting my temporary residence? No, it's well, okay, you have residence through family reunification. It kind of depends. If you're a spouse of a Croatian, I think that's going to be tough. I think that's going to be tough because when you have a residence in Croatia, there is an amount of time that you have to spend in Croatia to maintain your residence, and that kind of varies depending on your case. But the most common situation is you can't be gone from Croatia for more than 90 days in total per year, or 30 days at one time. So if you're a seafarer, it's unlikely that you would be able to maintain that kind of schedule. So that's something to keep in mind. If you need to consult with a lawyer about that, contact us. We'll put you in touch with one who can look at your case in more detail, because there's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle that we don't quite have here. Okay, what else do we have here? Hey Neve, does the family reunification residence permit include siblings? No, it does not. It does not at all. In fact, there are different rules for family reunification depending on whether you're a third country national or you're a Croatian or EU citizen. And even with the Croatian citizens, who have the most flexibility with family reunification, they do not have the ability to bring a sibling. It has to be in a straight line up or down, and of course there are certain restrictions depending on which relative it is, but siblings are not included in family reunification. But that's a great question. Thank you so much. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention about digital nomads. I knew there was something I was forgetting. Okay, about a year ago, we put out a post about how they were going to close the digital nomad loophole. Okay? They did. Now, I will very quickly explain what that means. Okay, I want to answer this question real quick and then I'll get back to it. Marcel, you can't read the new law on foreigners yet. So it's not going to be published it's not enacted until it is published in the Narodne Novine, which is the National Gazette. It's not going to be published there for probably the next 7 to 10 days. But once it is in force, it will be published in that act, and then we will be able to talk about it and share that updated act. But right now, the final version of the law is not public yet. Okay. All right. The digital nomad loophole. What is the digital nomad loophole? So essentially you have these two types of permits. You have digital nomad and you have other purposes. Three. But then you also have family reunification with a digital nomad. So those are these three things. Now, people were trying to figure out how they could stay for longer in Croatia without having to leave for 6 months in between. So what they did is they would kind of play this shell game of switching back and forth between these three bases so that they could extend their stay. Well, MUP got wise to that, and they didn't like it because that is not how the law was intended. And they actually, so they put in this new proposal that they were going to close that loophole, and based on the back channel that we got today, they did close that loophole. But here's the thing, they have already started doing that like a year ago. So it wasn't official, but all of the MUP stations were aware of it. So that meant if someone had an application in process that was trying to leverage this loophole, they denied it. If someone was trying to start a new application, they would not allow them to submit the application. So that loophole has already been in place for almost a year. Okay? That's the law on foreigners, guys. So like I said, we are going to post later today what I read to you in a different post. So it'll actually be a feed post, so you can take a look at that. But ultimately, this is what is confirmed, what I shared with you. And then we're gonna do a separate post about the digital nomad thing with the big fat disclaimer that I gave you at the beginning of this. We'll do that as well. And then once the act comes out, we are going to publish a post that's going to go over all the changes, because I assure you, this is not comprehensive. There's definitely going to be more changes that are going to be included in that act. But, sorry, excuse me. I'm just getting so excited. The oxygen is not coming up through my brain. I want to communicate that we don't tell you information lightly. Like, it's very important to us that what we tell you is factual. So we're not going to just jump to conclusions or tell you rumors, or, you know, we do our due diligence. We really try and use as many sources as we possibly can. That's why at the bottom of every single one of our posts is a list of the sources we use to produce that article. So that is why I'm being so clear with you about what has been confirmed, what has not been confirmed, so that you can understand. And I know everyone wants to know this information. We've been getting so many questions from people like, when are they going to pass the law on foreigners? When are they going to pass the law on foreigners? It's like, we don't know yet, you know, until they don't tell you they're going to do it until they do it. Like, when they said they scheduled a vote for today, we were looking at it yesterday, they didn't even say what they were voting on. So we don't know until they actually do these things. But even once they do, it's like there is a lag period from when they do the vote and when they publish the act, and then they publish the act, we have to comb through it, and then they still have to do the rule book, which is going to be several months out. So I really want to communicate that, because I know some of you have been following us for years, and I love you. Thank you so much for being here. But some of you are new. Like, there was somebody here already who's like, this is the first time you're joining. I'm so glad you're here. So you may not be familiar with us and what we try and do. So I just want to communicate all of that to you so you understand how important it is that we get our facts straight. All right? We do have another question. Exit the rat race. So you can get a work permit while you wait for ancestry citizenship. Yes, you can. So you can, if you are a member of the Croatian people, if you have Croatian heritage, you can apply for residence based on being a member of the Croatian people, and then you can freely work like a Croatian. You don't have to provide financial means, you don't have to provide insurance. Like, it's a much easier process for you, and we do have a guide on that residence permit already. So if you would like it, send us a DM and we will get that over to you. Okay? Whew. Just got so excited. I mean, I love laws. I love it. That's why this job is just so fun. So I want to say one quick thing to one of our fans out there, and then I want to get into the questions. So we had a longtime fan who, watcher of 5 Question Friday, who submitted a question this past week that I can't answer yet. But I wanted to give him a shout out, or her. I don't know if you are him or her, but Perigo, Parigoh, who is very often a watcher of this program, has been watching us for a long time. Thank you so much for your support and for your message. So while I cannot answer your question just yet, and you know why I can't answer your question just yet, but I will answer your question for you now. Yes and yes. But for everybody else, it's still a bit of a secret, and there is a reason for that. There is a reason for that. So yeah, that's it. So shout out again, and thank you to everybody who's here. Love you so much. Yay. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and get into the questions. So Jeff, on the 5-Question Friday forum, I know there was some hope that the U.S. Senate was going to ratify the double taxation treaty during the lame duck session, but since I have not heard anything, I'm assuming this did not happen. Is this correct? Yes, you are correct. We were hoping that the double taxation treaty between Croatia and the U.S. that was signed a couple of years ago would be ratified after during the lame duck session, which is the period between the election and when the new president gets elected. Sometimes things get pushed through. It did not. So I want to communicate what the problem is. It's with the Department of Treasury. I do know a little bit more about why there's a problem at the Department of Treasury, but I got that information from the U.S. Embassy, and they asked that we not share that information publicly, so I am not going to share that publicly. But it is a problem with the Department of Treasury. It's not a problem with the U.S. Senate. So we currently don't have an ambassador. We lost our last ambassador because, again, like all of the ambassadors around the world were fired. And so now they have to assign new ambassadors. There has been a new one assigned to Croatia, but she has not been confirmed by the Senate yet. So I will have the opportunity to interview the new ambassador at an event for the Association of Croatian American Professionals. It's probably going to be in May, but ultimately it depends on when she gets confirmed. And that's going to be one of my questions is, you know, how is this going to be your priority? Because I know with the last ambassador, I spoke to both the last ambassador about it and the economic unit chief for the U.S. Embassy, and they both said, like, we have been crawling up the Department of Treasury's butt. They are annoyed with us at this point. So they really did everything they possibly could to get that ratified and pushed out of the Department of Treasury, but it did not happen, sadly. So I will be asking her that question at that event. So if you are not a member yet, join. I'm part of it. Okay. All right. So next, if you want to join that association, it's only $100 a year, and I have put a link in the description if you are on YouTube, or you can DM us or comment, and we'll get it over to you. Okay. Let me make sure that I don't miss any other questions. Okay, great. All right, so next question comes from Svetlana on the 5-Question Friday forum. I'm an American citizen now living with my husband in Croatia and have temporary residence. When traveling outside the EU on a Croatian border or entering EU country, do I need the EES form? So I want to clear that up. EES is referring to the entry-exit system, which is an automated IT system for registering non-EU nationals traveling for a short stay within Europe anytime they cross an external border. Okay? Now, this is different than ETIAS. ETIAS is a travel authorization for those who come from visa-exempt countries before they enter the Schengen zone. Okay? So we have the European Union and we have the Schengen zone. Two different things, okay? So these are two different systems. Now, I do want to communicate both of these systems are not active yet, all right? Their operation has been delayed and delayed and delayed because the countries, not all of the countries who are participating are ready to implement it yet, okay? So right now, it seems like it's probably going to be fall 2025 when these two systems are implemented. Okay? Now, I have not answered her question yet, but I felt like I needed to explain what all that stuff was before I answered it. Now I will answer her question. So non-EU citizens who are legally resident in the European Union will be exempt from both EES and ETIAS. So if you are a resident in Croatia and you go back to your home country and you want to come back into Croatia, you do not have to do ETIAS or EES. Hey. Okay, so we do address EES and ETIAS in terms of everything that is known about these systems so far in our guide on the Schengen zone. So if you would like that, YouTube people, there's a link down below. Instagram people, DM us. Everybody else, drop a comment and we'll get it over to you. Next question comes from Melissa on the 5 Question Friday forum. You mentioned needing a will if you own a property in Croatia. Does that will need to be drafted here in Croatia, or can a will be drafted in my home country, be used and honored here in Croatia? Excellent question. So if you have a will that is prepared outside of Croatia, it will only be considered valid and recognized by Croatian institutions if it was prepared in accordance with the Convention on International Wills. Otherwise, it will not be recognized. So the safest way to ensure that your will is recognized is to create a Croatian will for your Croatian assets. It's important to understand, and to add it to the Register of Wills here. Because if you don't live here, or you live here as a foreigner and your heirs are abroad, like, Croatia's not going to go looking for your heirs, especially if you're a foreigner. You have to understand that, like, if Croatia doesn't know about it, they're not going to go seeking that information, So the best way to guarantee that your will is recognized is to have a will prepared according to Croatian law that is registered with the Register of Wills. So that is a repository where you can file it. That way, when you pass and Croatia is notified about you passing, whether that be in Croatia or from abroad, it's going to trigger an inheritance procedure that is automatic. It is different than many other countries handle it, but it is essentially the Matični Ured, the registrar, is notified of your death, and then they contact a public notary, and the public notary does an inheritance procedure where they put out a call, they send a letter to all of the heirs saying, come at this specific date and time, and you will find out what it is that you're getting. But if they don't know where the heirs are, or there's not a will on file, then it goes into a more automated state. And if you are a foreigner in Croatia, you don't have a will that they can find, your stuff's going to go to the state. I don't think you want that. So that's what I have to say about that. We do have a guide on this, on how to make a last will and testament in Croatia, including how to address foreign wills. So if you like that, find us, we will get it to you. All right, next question. This comes from, I've just answered your question, Marion. Yay! Michael Freer, friend of 5 Question Friday. He has not been on in a while. I should bring him on soon. Have you ever heard of any third country national combining time in the EU to apply for a long-term permit here? Like they've lived a couple of years in Spain, then they've moved to Croatia and been here for 3 years. No, that's not possible. So while there's similarities in the immigration systems within the European Union, because they're all member states, each immigration system has its own nuance. They regulate foreigners differently. They have different requirements. So ultimately, each country, like, you have to abide by their rules. You have to be there for continuous time. So if you want to apply for long-term or permanent residence in Croatia, depending on your situation, you have to be in Croatia for at least 4 to 5 continuous years, back to back, on a permit that qualifies for long-term or permanent residence. So you cannot combine that with any other country. Okay. All right, so we do have 2 guides. We have how to apply for long-term or permanent residence as a third country national, and then we also have a guide for EU nationals to do the exact same thing. So contact us or look down in the description on YouTube and you will get those, okay? This, I believe, is our last question today on this big, mega, special, jam-packed episode. This is from Dan on the 5 Question Friday forum. I'm now a dual U.S. Croatia citizen. As part of the application, I submitted my grandmother's original 1905 baptism certificate. The embassy in Los Angeles said there's no way to get it returned. I'm assuming it's in a drawer someplace in Zagreb. Is there a way to get it back? I'm sorry this happened to you. So it's not standard practice for you to get your documents back from the government. It doesn't matter whether you're applying for citizenship or residence or anything, really. Just assume you're not going to get that stuff back. Now, Dan can try to request it from the Ministry of the Interior. You'll likely have a better shot if you do use a lawyer, and of course we can recommend one, but it's still not even then guaranteed. If your documents are returned, it could take several months, and often they can be incomplete or destroyed, which I know is not great news in your case. Now, how do we prevent this? Don't ever give the government something that you want back. What they can do is they can make a true copy. And it's unfortunate that the LA consulate didn't tell this person that, because that's what the standard practice is when you go to the consulate to apply for citizenship, if there's a document you don't want to give up, you ask them to make a true copy, they make a copy, the caseworker stamps it, says, hey, this is a true copy, and then you get to keep your stuff. So that is the way that you should go about it. I definitely would recommend that for anyone with a naturalization certificate for their relative, because those are really difficult to get replaced. And sometimes those are really old documents. So anything that you don't want to lose, true copy. All right? So like I said, if you want help with a situation like that, we can recommend a lawyer who can try and navigate that for you. Otherwise, you just need to go straight to MUG. But it could be difficult, so I want to prepare you for that, all right? So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Next week, I'm going to Rijeka next week for some meetings. And I'm going to be heading back on Friday. So I don't know if I'm going to be in Rijeka or I'm going to be on the side of the road. I have no idea where I'm going to be next Friday. But I will not be in Split. I will be somewhere traveling between here and Rijeka. So yeah, I hope to see you next Friday. Thank you again. This is a little bit of a longer episode because we had to talk about the law on foreigners. So thanks so much for tuning in. Oh, hey, Kate. You're in Rovine. Oh, I'm not gonna go that far. I'm really gonna be sticking in Rijeka, but that's awesome. Send us a DM and Cam will let me know, and so that way next time I'm in Rovine. I know we're gonna start doing some expat and Croatia meetups this year. I don't know when the first one's gonna be. Oh, that's so kind of you to offer a place for me to stay. Thank you. But yeah, we're gonna be doing some expat and Croatia meetups this year, which is really super mega exciting. So if you want to participate in any of those meetups, send us a DM, let Cam know. We'll put you on a list so that way we can notify you whenever we're doing a meetup in your area. And if we have enough people for a specific area, then we might plan a meetup just for you. Okay? So again, thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next week. Ciao, vidimo se, bye, bye, bye.